Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this first day of February, the first of the month. Like the great Bone Thugs and Harmony song. I think that came out like 1996 for people in my age group here. The first of the month. Wake up, wake up. But anyways, I got a good show for you all tonight here. We're going to talk to Dan Quinn. What was the Washington Commanders thinking with that? Also, you got to question whether how desirable this job may be. I'll go over that. Plus, Micah Parsons. I was really surprised. Some of his biggest supporters have come out and criticized him for criticizing the Cowboys for not having the proper players. I've always liked him speaking out like that. Plus, Brock Purdy. I got a soundbite here from Jed York, the 49ers owner, talking about the discussion of that Brock Purdy may be better than Trey Lance and how that all went down. Talk about that as well. Plus, the Titans look like they are raiding the AFC North, which, hey, that's the win in this division in football. So, looks like they may be on something as well. There's a lot of other news and notes. There's some Joel Embiid news out there that doesn't look good. Didn't put that in the title, but I'll go over that. So, stand by. Go ahead and take first and only break. Be back here in 49 seconds. We'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then. Okay, now, I tell you, I'm really disappointed in the Washington Commanders. I've had Mike Richmond on here. I mean, you talk about a guy that knows a lot about the history of the Commanders / Washington Redskins organization, and that is Mike Richmond. And, he was excited initially when I talked to him, not saying he's not excited now, but when this hire was made, when this ownership change was made with Josh Harris buying the team from Dan Snyder, who had been under a tremendous amount of scrutiny, to say the least. And his issues with the league, and then the sexual harassment stuff and all that, and just being a bad owner, going through everything. So there was a lot of initial hype about this, and talking with Mike Richmond, and the idea that they had a defensive-minded head coach there, and Ron Rivera, that I was for sure that they were going to target an offensive-minded head coach. Of course, they did with Jonathan. Whatever his name is, the coach there that stayed with that went on, and Ben Johnson. Excuse me, I don't know why I got him and Jonathan Gannon, because they're both kind of young. Ben Johnson went on to stay with Detroit. They supposedly there were ramblings, but no official interview. What I get with Jim Harbaugh there. Obviously, they did interview Eric Bieniemy. They interviewed Raheem Morris, and for some reason they wanted to go with Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn, a defense coordinator of Dallas, 43-42 as a head coach. Okay. Dallas. If you take out the Green Bay, that was a postseason game. During the regular season game, yes, they were fifth in total defense. Very good defense, even from the time. I mean, much improved from the time he started there compared to the other defense. I think it was Mike Nolan. Mike Nolan was the only former Baltimore Ravens coach that didn't do well otherwise. I'll talk about that when I talk about the Titans story. But anyways, yes, and I did note here, the Green Bay game, they gave up 415 yards, 41 points. Now, Quinn, also trying to make a bigger point here. In Seattle in 2013, Legion of Boom, that was what I was trying to think of the other day. Yeah, number one total defense in 13. But when he became the head coach, and this makes a lot of sense, a lot of coaches that are really just better being coordinators that I've noticed, per se. Brandon Staley, for example. Very good coordinator for a short time with the Rams, and I think he may get back there. The Chargers defense fell off a cliff when towards the end there, and so when he took over Atlanta for the Falcons and his side of the ball, their best defense during that time, from 2015 to 2020, was ninth in the NFL. Most of those years, it was bottom third, 15, 17 to the bottom third, towards the end of the league. So, like I said, some coaches, they cannot handle all that and still dominate their side of the ball, which is the reason why they were brought in for the first place. Atlanta's defense has always been bad, So I just don't get it. And again, I've mentioned this before, that he is a guy that once Kyle Shanahan, let's go back to the Super Bowl year, right? I want to say that was technically 15 and 16. 16 is when that Super Bowl was played, okay? Or maybe it's 16 and 17. Means no, never mind. So after they blow that big lead, the 28-3, the big Patriots Super Bowl where Tom Brady comes back and gets his fifth ring, and then we start saying he's better than Montana. And I said, well, he starts one up in Montana. Well, Kyle Shanahan, yeah, it was 16 and 17 because Shanahan took over in 17 for the 49ers, okay? They made it back the next year. To the playoffs, not the Super Bowl. They were put out by the Philadelphia Eagles, who eventually went on to win the Super Bowl. Then they didn't make it. Then they fell off a truck. So that's 2 years after the really sharp offense. Usually that happens when you got a really good head coach. For example, you Cowboy fans, when Bill Parcells left, when him and Jerry Jones had enough of each other, when he left, Wade Phillips took over. They went 13-3. That was Terrell Owens' year with Tony Romo. He's my quarterback, crying and all that stuff. And, of course, they got beat by the Giants. Giants went on to win the whole thing that year. Then after that, they fell off. Didn't make the playoffs. And it wasn't too long after that that Dallas moves on from Wade Phillips, who I never really saw as a really good head coach. He was all very good coordinator. Very good coordinator. Not a good head coach. But, I think they could have did better. But I made some notes. They interviewed McDonald, who later went to Seattle. They interviewed Raheem Morris, who signed with Atlanta. No official interview, but I think maybe they may have talked with Jim Harbaugh, who later went to the Chargers. So I heard something on Fox Sports Radio the other day, and I could not confirm it through any specific articles, But I have got this indication that maybe Josh Harris is a little too hands-on, a micromanager, but I don't know how he can do that because he owns the 76ers and he owns the New Jersey Devils. So that may be a little bit overplayed there. They listen. They also interviewed Eric Bieniemy, so it was 2 Rooney Rule. They got the Rooney Rule taken care of because they interviewed. They already interviewed Raheem Morris and they interviewed Bieniemy, who was already in house, and so it leaves out there. Maybe Todd Monken's is just not a good interview. He's 57. Maybe there's some questions why he didn't go after a head coaching job before. I would have rolled the dice with him. I would have rolled the dice with Eric Bieniemy, even if he is a bad interview, or even a Mike Vrabel. Because listen, Mike Vrabel is 9 games over 500. Dan Quinn is 1 game over 500. Okay? So I just don't understand the whole thought behind that. Shoot, I would even take a chance on a Bill Belichick. I would take a chance on a Bill Belichick who would bring in a Josh. Remember, Josh McDaniels was fired. Josh McDaniels, another guy. He's been fired twice. I think he's still a good coordinator. I think he would have worked out with a Drake May and a Bill Belichick, kind of worked that out. I think people are scared of the Belichick thing because they don't think they know how long he's going to coach. I don't know if him wanting to take over the organization is really that big a deal. We don't have any official word on that. That's all speculation because of what he did with the Patriots. That's all speculation from what he did with the Patriots. You've really got to be disappointed if you're a Commanders fan to hire a guy like Dan Quinn, and they've got the most money, $83 million in cap space. They got the number 2 pick overall. Drake May could very well be the best quarterback in this draft. We don't know that. That Caleb Williams is. Caleb Williams could simply be the another product of Lincoln Riley for all we know at this point. I mean, I'm going to talk about a story here in a minute where Kyle Shanahan, he has to make the bold move and talk to the owner of the 49ers and say, listen, this guy we drafted with the very last pick, and this Brock Purdy kid, this number 13 that you may have seen around, we think he's better than Trey Lance, the guy we traded up for. We know you don't want to hear this, but, I feel like I got it. So you just never know. Drake May could be better than Caleb Williams. The Commanders have a lot of pieces in place. Why would you go with the Dan? He must be a really good interview. Maybe he's going to bring in a good staff. I don't know. I don't really know. But, and like I said, Adam Schefter, he pointed out the fact that the guy's he's got a lot going for him. Number 2 pick overall, $70 million cap space. He's saying 70 million. I've read 83. Just a bad hire, man. I don't know if it's a terrible hire per se, but I feel like they'll probably be looking for another coach in 2 or 3 years. The issue I have with this more than anything is when you bring in a new franchise quarterback, you don't want him being scarred by dealing with a defensive-minded head coach. If I'm bringing in if I got a quarterback and I know he can play, and I just feel like the coach is not for instance, I still think Trevor Lawrence can play. Doug Peterson was fired from the Eagles. His teams lack focus sometimes. Look at what they did play. Look how they played against the Texans early in the season. At home, blown out, giving up big special teams plays, missed tackles everywhere. That could be a situation where they simply lack focus. I would much rather bring in a guy that I'm drafting that high at quarterback position with an offensive-minded head coach, not a defensive-minded head coach, okay? And I don't know if this general manager that they brought in from the 49ers had a say in that. I don't know if Josh Harris did. Although, like I said, I've heard Josh Harris is very hands-on. Now, that is a very loose term. I don't know if maybe he's scaring off some of the bigger name candidates. This could be horrible news for your Commander fans, thinking this guy is going to be the totally opposite of a Daniel Snyder, which at the end, the Commanders become one of those places where nobody really wanted to play. Not unless you didn't have that many options and they're offering you a boatload of cash, kind of like it was when he first took over, when they hired Bruce Smith, overpaid him, and Dion, all those guys way past their prime. This was in like 2000, brought in a whole bunch of players there. In 2000, Mike Richmond could go in detail with it, but it's really just that is a bad hire, man. Good luck, though. Maybe he'll put in a good staff around him. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe third time's a charm. Maybe they get an all-world quarterback and the quarterback carries them. But it's good news if for the AFC East or NFC East, you got Vic Fangio now with the Eagles. Now, Brian DeBall, I don't know what's going to happen with the Giants. I think that if they play as bad this year as they did last year, they're going to probably look at that first year as a fluke. And then the Giants will be looking for a head coach. Now Dallas has got to get a defensive coordinator. Go out and get Wink Martindale. Go get Wink. He's already coached at the Giants. He knows the NFC East. He's got that Baltimore background. I do not think that Dan Quinn was a big personality. He coached with another older coach in Pete Carroll. So I'm not sure if McCarthy would be – I don't think he'd be intimidated by hiring a guy like a Martindale, who's a big type A personality. His job's on the line as well. And that's a good transition right there. So Micah Parsons, I've said this in the offseason, and I still stand by it today, okay? Let me read what he said, and it's getting a lot of play around the sports media world. Let me get a sip of water here. Man, it was 60 degrees here in Nashville. Such a good, pleasant. Tomorrow is Groundhog Day, and I really hope this groundhog don't see a shadow. We have an early spring. We had 7 inches of snow, and that was enough. I looked up the average here in Nashville. It's 5 inches. They're already over their average in one big storm. Okay. Oh, man. That other Philadelphia story might not be good either. Not a good day for Josh Harris. I'll tease that. But anyways, all right. Let me see here. I've had some information here on him, on Micah Parsons. He had a pretty good quote here, and I wanted to read it. I know that. Okay, here we go. Yeah, he says on his podcast here. I've been in this league 3 years. I've seen it all. Now that was he kind of got some heat about that from veterans. Some of these guys on the Get Up and Bart Scott and those players, former players who played 10, 11, 12 years in the league, saying you've been in there 3 years. Come on. But, okay. He says, I hope that we go all in. I hope that we go all out and get players that we're missing because we didn't go do that this year. I hope that we challenge ourselves, become better, become greater. He got criticisms from the former players there. I think it was Damien Woody was one of the guys here. And then Skip Bayless, I was surprised. Now that was Damien Woody was the guy from Get Up, and that's ESPN guys. And Bart Scott, former linebacker. And of course, Skip Bayless with Undisputed, huge Dallas Cowboy guy, claims to be anyways, was criticizing him for that and really criticizing his play in the Green Bay game where they got smoked. He said, well, maybe the guy's just undersized and whatnot. And listen, I just take a totally different approach to that for Micah. I think the reason why they've played this well these last few years with Dan Quinn, a lot of that is from Parsons. I talked about this with former Dallas Cowboy on the last championship group. Now, he played on 93. Now, the 95 Cowboys, 95-96 Cowboys, he wasn't on that team. That was with Barry Switzer. Barry Switzer's second year. Remember, Barry Switzer's first year, they lost. But with Jim Jeffcoat, 90, 92, 93, 93, 94, that they won those 2 years back to back. And then he went off to Buffalo when Jimmy Johnson left. Now, but I was telling Jim, I said, listen, man, since you left, your group split up and retired and whatnot. I think this is the most competitive they've been. The most consistent player that is very serious about winning is Micah Parsons. I think the other players, they kind of say, yeah, we got to improve them. They're very monotone. We really need to improve on this, that. Obviously, we didn't do it. I mean, I like Dak Prescott. I like DeMarcus Ware. Those players. Romo used to say, whatever you want to hear on the camera. But I told you about this before, where Romo admitted when he's with CBS doing the color there with Jim Nantz, he said he used to call audibles to get his stats up on the goal line. Well, that's not a guy trying to win championships. Because if you throw an interception and cost the game, that he's not trying to win championships. I was a big, I forgot the guy's name, Jason Witten guy. I know Jason Witten was serious about winning, but he never called out the team like that I've heard of or know of. Maybe somebody else. But my point is, Mike is just not there to be famous and draw a big check because he's a Dallas Cowboy and play great in September, October, November. And if they get the snot kicked out of them in a playoff game, he's not going to do fake outrage and then go home and enjoy being a Cowboy and rest on his laurels. That's what I like about this young man. Okay, he's serious about winning, and I tell him, hey, listen, man, I mean what I say. If I'm him, and I tell Jerry Jones that he's a hot commodity, a pass rusher like a Micah. That makes a good point, Bayless did, that if he's going to be a true edge rusher, he's probably about 20 pounds too light. If he's going to be a linebacker, he's okay. Be a coverage guy. He says, I'll do whatever you want. But the truth of the matter is that they need a tackle. They need a defensive tackle. They've got the guy they got from Michigan. The Hankins guy was hurt. Got banged up towards the end of the season. They got gouged in the running game. They got beat by Arizona. James Conner ran all over them, even though their line was down, but their defense was lagging. It's big and quick. They need help at cornerback. Stephon Gilmore is not getting any younger. Deron, what's his name? Deron Bland or whatever. He got all those interceptions, but he also got torched a lot. They need help at corner. They need help at defensive tackle. Aaron Donald was telling them during that blowout, if you guys remember back when they blew out the Rams before everything started to turn around for the Rams, that he said, hey, come get me. Come get me. He's making the gesture on TV, Aaron Donald. I think if they got Aaron Donald, a really good play by an Aaron Donald possibly could have turned that Green Bay game around early. I don't think that's 27-0 if you got a guy like Aaron Donald in the middle, okay? I think that's what he's getting at. Now, privately, this guy's going to be a star. He is a star. He's borderline defensive player of the year the last 2 years. His play has fallen off. Skip is right about that. Towards the end, he is a little undersized. He's got all the speed and whatnot. But he's a cross between Derek Thomas, that used to be of Kansas City Chiefs, and Lawrence Taylor. He's a cross between those two. All right. Play hasn't quite got there yet, but Ray Lewis, I remember it vividly, him saying that when he got older, he wanted the Ravens to go out and get him a tackle so he can roam free out there. All right. And they end up getting Haloti Ngata, and eventually with Ngata playing tackle, that Raven team went on to win a Super Bowl. That's what they need really bad. They need a dominant tackle. They need to go out and get a Wink Martindale at coordinator. Go out and get him at coordinator since you lost Dan Quinn. Quinn may be addition by subtraction. And of course, they're going to keep Dak Prescott. The others started talking about Prescott and his major cap hit. From what I've seen out of the Saints over the last 2 years, maybe that last year, let's go last 3 years, going back to the last year with Drew Brees, you can be busted wide open on the cap. But if you set your mind to it, you can get it right and slightly get under the cap. If you're in go for it now mode, the Saints have close to $100 million plus over the cap. And Mickey Loomis, their general manager, has got them under the cap. So, in other words, they could figure out Dak's salary, okay, and add some more defensive pieces and get that power running back. Maybe go out and draft a guy. Derrick Henry here out of Nashville. He's going to be a free agent. Somebody to complement a Tony Pollard who was coming back from a serious injury the year before, okay? So, I mean, there's a lot they can do. He's a guy that likes to remind that team, Parsons, that, again, I'm not here just to be a famous cowboy and be a September to November guy, and then after, like they have in the past, start playing mediocre football after Thanksgiving and be one and done in the playoffs and be mocked by everybody around as a paper champion, a team that's not serious, a team that's not for real. I like that about him. He that outspokenness, that reminded me of Warren Sapp. People that, Joey Porter, former Pittsburgh Steelers, said, listen, that guy's a paper champion, man. Because Sapp was always pumping up that Tampa Bay Buck team. We're going to win the Super Bowl, man. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And one day they had this was like in 2001, I think. He was walking through the stretch line of the Steelers on a Monday night football game. And it really ticked off. I think the guys had to be separated. Joey Porter, their linebacker. And there was a little bit of a skirmish there. Nothing major. But then the game starts, and the Steelers went down there and beat them down there in Tampa. And then he says, I ain't nothing but a paper champion. Well, a year later, they ended up winning the Super Bowl because he stayed on it. He did not accept not getting over that. He knew they had it, what it takes, and he was serious about actually winning. That's what I like about Parsons, and I hope they get him squared away and get him some help, and make this a defensive team that is about running and play action. And don't have Dak Prescott throwing over 25, 26 times a game. He needs to be under 30. They have a winning record when he passes under 30 times a game. Okay? So kudos to Parsons. He's basically saying it's not acceptable to be just mediocre to playoffs like that. They got the crap beat out of them. They got blown out, He's the only one to act like he really cared about it. He didn't even say nothing. He was so mad when it first happened. So if you're a Cowboy, you got to say, bravo. Bravo, this is unacceptable. Here to win big, So anyways, like I said, let's see how it works out for him. Don't have a lot of faith in him with Jerry Jones calling the shots here. But like I said, and I tell you, Parsons, and if they want to give him a whole lot of flack, I'd say, hey, listen, I tell you what, trade me to a contender. I'll go to Baltimore, I don't know how they'd fit him, but Baltimore figured out, trade him to a contender. Trade him to Detroit, which I doubt they'll do that because it's an NFC team. But I mean, that's what I would say, because Parsons, everybody can use an edge rusher like him, a guy who can move around all over the place. Little food for thought. They won't do it because Jerry will never admit he's made a mistake, and he would never trade away a big time player. He don't have it in him to do all that. Okay. So Jed York, he's the owner of the 49ers, and I guess they're doing some because I know they're going to have media day next week. Maybe this was something at the Pro Bowl, I guess. But he was explaining about the discovery of Brock Purdy and the situation there with Kyle Shanahan. I guess it's from 95.7 The Game. I guess this is Bay Area sports station. They put this out on their X app here. Basically, Jed York's talking about Kyle Shanahan coming to him last year during camp and telling him about Brock Purdy here. And best quarterback over Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Listen up. Good stuff here. Here's the owner of the 49ers.
I said his honesty, his directness. We haven't really talked much about Brock, but I mean that's a good example of Kyle's directness. Last year in preseason, I think week 1 of training camp, which you have a quarterback that we're paying, I think, $20 million to. You have a guy that you drafted with investing 3 first-round picks into.
Yeah, I forgot that part.
Grabbed me after practice. He's like, hey man, we got to talk. And that's generally not a good thing when your coach tells you got to talk.
When you hear that from your coach or your girlfriend, that ain't good.
I think our third-string quarterback's our best quarterback. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, obviously, like, we've invested in Trey. Like, Trey's doing a good job. Like, we're going to do everything that we can. We're not going to change that. And we're not going to change the depth chart. But, like, I think Brock will end up being our quarterback at some point. And, like, he didn't force it. Right? You had 2 injuries, and that's how Brock ended up playing. But he's always honest, even if it's not, like, one thing that owners don't love to hear when they've invested money and or draft picks or both into people, that the last pick in the draft is the guy that we think is the best. That's generally not great news.
Yeah.
But he's honest, and he let it play out the right way. Brock, ironically, I think his first game was against the Chiefs, and he had some mop-up time. And Brock, I think he threw 1 ball into the stands. And, I may or may not have had some sarcastic comments for Kyle post-game. But when Brock took over last year, like, I think we had a calm about us, but there was a sense that, like, nothing catches you by surprise. And again, like you.
Yeah. And that was that Chiefs game. They did play last year, and the Chiefs put 44 points on the 49ers. So they put Brock Purdy in there. And I remember here's more from Jed York, the owner of the 49ers.
You might not love everything that Kyle tells you, but he's always open and honest, especially in the moment. And he's very clear about that with me. It's like, look, I will tell you exactly what I think of a player, a situation, a coach, in the moment, but that might not be how I feel 3 weeks from now. So don't hold me to, this is what I said about somebody in training camp when we're in week 6 of the season. Like, ask me in the moment what you want to ask about whoever, and I'll give you my open and honest opinion. And again, you might not always love what he says, but I've been around enough people in this league to know that you don't always get a straight comment from people in those positions. And
well, he's such a hot commodity. When Kyle Shanahan was hired, he was just off of a Super Bowl offensive coordinator from the 49er or from the Falcons. I mean, the guy's been there since 2017. They've been to 2 Super Bowls now and 2 other AFC championship games since 17. I mean, that's really good. Now, like, you like to see him win it. You would like to see him win it. But, that reminded me of that story that came out of New England years later. years later that, the Patriots, they number one pick overall, I want to say 95, Drew Bledsoe. And I want to say in 96, but I may have my years mixed up. He may have been 94. In 96, they get to the Super Bowl. Bill Parcells, they got beat by the Packers there, led by Brett Favre. But fast forward a few years later, gets a big contract, $100 million contract. We're talking 2000 now. 2000 now, and then in 2001, they draft this 6th-round pick out of Michigan, and the coaches are all saying, we just paid him a lot of money. What are you going to tell Mr. Kraft now? That the 6th-round pick from Michigan is better than the guy that we just re-signed for a $100 million contract that just got us to the Super Bowl a few years ago? That's going to be a hard sell. They go 0-2, lucky for Belichick. Injury saved his rear end. They put Brady in. The rest is history. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, that 1991, this is from Mark Schlereth, the 1990 to the 1992 draft with number two pick there, and I think his name, he was a former University of former Tennessee player. He was drafted to the Washington then Redskins, and this guy was I think it was 90. It might have been 93. I'm trying to think, but either way, he was like the number 2 pick overall. Heath Schuller, former all you ball fans, and they grabbed a guy in like the 6th guy. I think it was like Gus Frerotte or somebody. And Mark Schlereth says a couple weeks in a training camp, we knew he was better than the number 2 overall pick. And, of course, that guy played for years. Schuller busted out. The Tennessee player ended up busting out, But I tell you what, you just never know. Look for the Commanders when they drafted Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins. They made a big trade up for him. If this was the 94 draft. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Heath Schuller. Kirk Cousins, a 4th-round pick. So you could tell that Griffin was more Daniel Snyder, okay? And Mike Shanahan, Carroll's father, was like, kind of like this guy. I think it's like Arizona or something. Kind of like this Kirk Cousins kid. Let's try him in the 4th round. That's kind of odd. You get a 4th-round guy. And, of course, he ends up beating out. He's still playing, and Griffin's still complaining why he's some kind of victim. Now, finally, Jay Gruden, John Gruden's dad said, his brother, they were arguing a few weeks ago, and he just said, listen, man, Robert, I don't know why you're coming to me, man. You just didn't do the work, dude. You went to 2 other teams. They didn't hold you, including the Ravens. So let's not start crying about the past, But my point is, sometimes you never know what you will get out of that draft. So I guess my point is keep drafting quarterbacks. You never know who's going to fall through the cracks through a 5th round, a Brady. Dak, he's not perfect, but he was a 4th round. He was better than what they had, I think he was better than Romo. And Romo wasn't even drafted. So, Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. And they had already got a guy on their team that they paid money to. And, of course, the rookie beat him out. So, that's a good thing about football. It's the best man wins, Not always the case in the NBA and other sports. Eventually the cream's going to rise to the top. But NFL, if you're killing in practice, they're going to get you out there, good thing about the football. Okay, switching gears here. The Titans here. So there's some news here on roster building out of Nashville. And at some point, I'm going to bring Rich Ferris back on from the Titans flagship, the 104.5 The Zone that calls the Titans game. Rich is really good. It got reported today that the Titans have hired Baltimore Ravens defensive back coach Darnell Wilson. He's 41-year-old coach now. I was hoping that they would went with an older guy, maybe a Wink Martindale. Somebody, I'm throwing him out there because he's out there. Somebody around his age to help out the young Brian Callahan initially. But when you get a coach from a Baltimore Ravens, they're usually pretty good. I don't know what is the Ravens. They find a way to find – they just have a way of finding good defensive coaches. Martindale was a Ravens coach, I want to say. Chuck Pagano, not a great head coach, not a bad head coach, but a really good defensive coordinator. Marvin Lewis, those coaches like that. I mean, you had one bad one. Nolan wasn't too great. But the rest of them, I mean, they have a really good track record of just really good coaches, you know. So this seems like a home run here. Rex Ryan was a really good defensive coordinator. Not a great coach, but a really good coordinator from the Ravens here. But also news broke late this afternoon that the Titans have hired Bill Callahan. So maybe, just maybe, this is the 1-2 punch that they needed with the older, more experienced previous head coach, maybe dad, and Cleveland's okay this. Mary Kate Cabot out of, she covers the Cleveland Browns here, and I want to see what she said about this. So the Titans have asked permission to interview the Titans have asked permission to interview O-line coach Bill Callahan, and Callahan is expected to join his son Brian, the Titans' new head coach here. But maybe she and then she reiterated her post on the X out, which I actually like it better being the X out because I didn't like Twitter, what it stood for. I didn't like the people who ran it. That's what it is. It's a former Twitter, but I'm just gonna stay with it's the X out. So this is now she confirmed it just a little while ago. She says it's 100% done deal. Bill Callahan, the legendary offensive line coach from the Cleveland Browns, Brian's dad, to the Titans the first time an NFL head coach hires his father, okay? Instead of the father hiring the son hires the father. Bill Callahan used to be the coach of the Raiders, okay? Wasn't a great head coach, but a very good, well-respected, well with an exclamation point, respected offensive line coach around the league, been around the league that I know of personally over 20 years. He was the Raiders head coach when John Gruden left back in 2001. He took over the Raiders in 2002, and they ended up getting to the Super Bowl. Of course, they got beat by John Gruden's Tampa Bay Bucks team. That was when the center went crazy. Supposedly, Al Davis changed the game plan the middle of the week or something. It was crazy talk. But so Browns fans, I'm reading online, they're ticked off about this. What's bigger about this? Obviously, you got the son with the dad's help. That's awesome. Okay. But also Tennessee's weakest link is their offensive line. This guy is a specialty. Listen, the Browns, folks, they had their offensive tackle, left tackle, out for the season at the very beginning, like 4 or 5 games in. Their right tackle, 3 or 4 games in, he was out for the season. They still made the playoffs. They won 10 or 11 games. They clinched a wild card 2 weeks before the season ended. So they didn't play the last week. Now they still got blown out. They still got blown out by that Houston Texans team. That was not Callahan's fault. That was Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt, whatever his name is, fault. So Stefanski fired the offensive coordinator. But Callahan, they wanted to keep Callahan, and the Browns were pretty cool about it. They said, hey, man, guy wants to go coach with his son. Callahan's going to come down here, help Tennessee run the ball better. Now, if they could just, Ron Carthon could go out, get that Joe Alt at left tackle, get some pieces, maybe get a guard during free agency. Maybe they can get Jonas Williams to go play right tackle for here in Tennessee. Now, he might want to play left tackle. That's the right tackle from the Cincinnati Bengals. Jonas Williams is the guy who was the starting left tackle of the Bengals, kept getting hurt, not really living up to par. The Bengals end up signing big free agent guy from Kansas City, Orlando Brown. He's solid left tackle. Wish the Titans would have went after him. They got him at left tackle, moved Jonas Williams over to right. He moaned and groaned, but they had a good line. It wasn't their fault that Joe Burrow got hurt. That was Joe Burrow's fault. He just didn't have his head on a swivel. He had a wrist injury. And of course, he was out for the season. So my point is this guy will be a free agent, and maybe he can come to Tennessee. But either way, Tennessee's offensive line is going to be much better coached right now. So that is a big – so basically they're raiding the AFC North. The AFC North had the best record in the NFL this year. The AFC North is usually pretty freaking good. They had 3 out of the 4 teams make the playoffs. They had the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. The Bengals were in the AFC Championship game last year, the Super Bowl year before that. I mentioned that. That's why I think the heat is on Mike Tomlin coming into next year. Talked about that the other day. Okay. There's some more news here. Like I said early in the program, Josh Harris, the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers and the owner of the Washington Commanders here, kind of having a rough night, in my opinion. This funny thing is, no LeBron, no Anthony Davis. I'm looking through my X file here, and the Lakers are up by 14 over Boston. Boston was mailing it in, thinking the Lakers would be terrible. Okay, now, so Joel Embiid news has just came up. He's got a meniscus tear in his he's got a meniscus tear here in his knee. Now, they're not sure. Also, wow, the Raiders now have locked up Cliff Kingsbury. See, they're thinking big. Whatchamacallit should have got Cliff Kingsbury. The Bears should have. But anyways, okay. Let me give you the exact write-up here, so I'm not talking out of school here. But it looks like that Embiid, they do not know like the severity of this. He could be in pretty bad shape here. All right. The guys, that's been the knock on them. I was talking about that with Carlos the other day. Embiid is now they're not even giving an update on the guys. He's going to be out through the weekend. That sounds like a really bad injury, but a lot of times these injuries sound bad, and then they not end up being nothing. Certain injuries like if you say torn ACL, torn Achilles, that's a different situation. But I'm looking for the exact write-up, and also the NBA's fined Philadelphia for failing to list Embiid on the team's injury report in an accurate and timely manner of January 27th. So there's been talk about him not being eligible for any kind of postseason awards. All NBA team and all that, because you got to play 65 games. And I want to say he's about out of 82, you got to play 65. He's about 4 short. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think he's going to get it from what they're saying about him at this point right now. So it's unfortunate, man. Meniscus injury. Sixers will be without him. They might be a lottery team. I hope they're not out expected period of time. Yeah, and that's my thing about Embiid. I mean, you brag about him, how well he plays in the regular season. He pushed himself last year, got the MVP award, and then he simply ran out of gas, and he gets these injuries. He was injured in the playoffs last year. And, of course, he was injured in the playoffs the year before that. As I mentioned yesterday or the day before that, the guy's been injured since his first year at Kansas in college. And that's the thing about Embiid. So I just don't think he's a star you can really build around. And I think after this incident, they've already moved off Doc Rivers. They've got Nick Nurse. They've got a young, talented Tyrese Maxey there. You just got to wonder if he's not the main guy here. And that's the bad thing about the NBA. There's such a scarcity of talent in the NBA. But I think that's changing. But it hasn't quite got fully that hasn't fully got into the minds of management ownership. For example, you have 4 or 5 players now score over 60 points. Luka Doncic. There's a lot more international players that are playing really well. Victor Wembanyama seems to be getting better by the day. The talent's spread out per se, but Kawhi Leonard got an extension over the summer, and he's been hurt the whole time that the Clippers have had him. You would never see something like that in the NFL, but there's a fear there that you have to have these players, even though they're playing 50% of their games. They're not available in the playoffs. And I like Kawhi Leonard, but man, you got to play in the playoffs. He hadn't played in the playoffs in 3 years. Maybe longer now. I think it was 19, right? It was 2019 when he won that championship with the Toronto Raptors there. So that's unfortunate. I don't know how bad it's going to be with Embiid, but we'll find out eventually, folks. Victor Wembanyama and Hornets forward Brandon Miller will be named to the Kia's Western and Eastern Conference Rookies of the Month. So these guys, at least the young guys, are playing well. I think that was the number 1 and number 2 pick there. I know Wembanyama was number 2. I'm not sure if Miller was. So, and like I said, there was some breaking news here out of the Raiders, and maybe I'll talk about this tomorrow. And perhaps I may bring John Restano on next week, folks. Big Bears fan. Because the Bears went and hired somebody else. They did not hire Cliff Kingsbury. The point behind the Bears hiring the former Arizona Cardinals coach, which also was the USC offensive coordinator, Kingsbury, coach Caleb Williams, who was likely to be the number 1 pick, coached him at USC in college. It would have been a perfect fit. Maybe the head coach was feeling insecure about that. Maybe they want to fire him or bring in Kingsbury to be the head coach. I don't know. Either way, the Raiders jumped on it. The Raiders have locked in on Cliff Kingsbury as a new offensive coordinator, Mike Glaferio. Okay, so this is not final yet, but no deal yet, but it is expected to get done following the year at USC. The former Cardinals head coach returns to the NFL. And, of course, maybe they make an aggressive move to go up to 1. I'm not sure if they're going to roll with Aiden O'Connell. But that's a good hire by Antonio Pierce. Defensive-minded head coach. I know Jim Jeffcoat had his questions about Pierce as a college recruiter and coach at Arizona State. But, what he's did at there, I mean, look, they were the last team when he was the interim coach there at the Raiders. They're the last team to beat this Chiefs team that's in the Super Bowl, and probably before the kickoff will be favored. So, anyways, I did want to make some quick announcements here before I end the show. Sonia, let me make sure I got Sonja's last. Oh, Sonja Pearson. Met her through the Mac and Jack and Jim Jeffcoat show. Big Carolina Panthers fan from Charlotte, lives in the Atlanta area. Got a good feel for the Falcons and whatnot. I'm going to ask her about the new coach they're hired at Charlotte. She will be on the program Thursday, I want to say. She will be on the the program Thursday, 30 minutes past the hour, okay? 30 minutes into the show. And then on Wednesday, before that, I'll have Jeffrey Descovich back on. He's going to talk about his Sports Illustrated article he wrote a few years ago. And we'll do some NBA updates on him, and I'll get his pick for the Super Bowl as well. I may try to squeeze in a John Restano at some point next week. And, of course, I'll have Carlos Madden New Yorker Chavez on Friday, and he will be on tomorrow, hopefully, if nothing's changed. And we'll talk about all these this coaching carousel and whatnot. So if you guys like the show, share the show. I will see you otherwise tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.